Hey, Shalom, Shalom. I'm going to start off as by giving no praise to Yahweh, Bashem, El Shah, Bashem, Kakodash, that belongs to the apostles of James and honesty, brothers in the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. This is an information video. I've got to keep it as such, because as soon as I, put my opinions, as Esau will call them, as soon as I make any commentary on this, Esau will block the video. So all I'm going to do is do some reading, but those that are of sound mind will understand where I'm getting to, where I'm heading. Right. So basically, also one of the things about these vaccines that are being pushed out at the moment is they've not got approval. They've got emergency use authorization. Right. So basically, been looking at the differences between emergency use authorization and approval. Two very different things. Right. And part of this is makes me, because for instance, I like the statistics when I look at like stats and this, that, and the other. But with statistics, you have terminology. Like for instance, for us, I can't think of an example offhand, but for us, we might have two similar words, but in a statistics land, these are very different meanings, right? You have words that have very different meanings. The same thing with anything that this man is going to be giving you in terms of, because this man speaks in legalese, right? It's what the scripture says, a tongue which thou knowest not, right? It would pursuant to Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, right? Because we think he's speaking English, but actually he's speaking legalese, right? And that is the same thing when it comes to approval and authorization, right? So when you hear these news articles saying how Pfizer's vaccine has been approved, no, it has been authorized for use, that's very different to approved for use. Okay, so we'll read some of this article. It says in most contexts, it's perfectly acceptable to use approval and authorization interchangeably, and that's because the English is a bastard tongue, right? In English, once again, certain things you can use interchangeably, but when you come into the realms of science, when you come into the realms of mathematics, when you come into realms of statistics, words cannot be used interchangeably, and actually, you've got to look up every single word that is used. And there's a topic I kind of want to do, but I'm just waiting, to kind of get more material to do it, right? Because there are certain things, once again, in this realm of terminology that I wanted to touch on. Like for instance, for Jake, when we think of single parent household, we think of, well, is a mum and that's it. But Esau has an actual definition of what a single parent household is. Right, so when you're consuming information that Esau is, the word they will use is disseminating to you, i.e., they're giving it to you, right? When you're consuming that information, you have to understand the context and the words and the terminology that he's doing it, and as the scripture says, not being ignorant of anything small or great, because as we've just read here, it says in most contexts it's perfectly acceptable to use approval and authorization interchangeably, right? But as we're going to go into this article, this is not the case when it comes to these COVID vaccines. Like I said, I'm not doing a commentary. I'm literally reading an article, right? So you senses looking at this video. This is literally me reading an article from a mainstream publication. As you can see there, that is from The Verge, right? So, but not at the food not at the FDA, right? And definitely not when it comes to COVID-19 vaccines. If the topic comes up at your Zoom holiday party, here's a cheat sheet for the specific uses of these familiar terms. Approval. No COVID-19 vaccines have been approved. Approval means the FDA has officially decided that a product is safe and effective for its designated use, right? The process for approval involves rigorous reviews of all available data on the product and can take several months. Authorization. To speed things up in an emergency like a pandemic, the FDA can grant emergency use authorizations, EUAs. An EUA, as its name implies, authorizes a product for use during unusually urgent circumstances if the benefits of its use outweigh any known or potential risk. Any known or potential risk. Any known or potential risk. A vaccine that combats a global pandemic is an ideal candidate for an EUA. We can't afford to lose any more time in the midst of a crisis with an ever climbing death toll. The FDA granted an EUA for Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine, and it's likely to do the same for the Moderna vaccine this week. This is going back December 18th, so it's quite an old article. But I was just Spirit just jumped on me to look at the differences, because once again there is a difference between an authorization, especially an an emergency use authorization, and an approval. Right, it says as long as no serious harms from the vaccines are discovered, they will maintain authorization until the pandemic is over. At that point, the pharmaceutical companies will decide if they want to seek FDA approval. Remdesivir, an antiviral drug, was granted an EUA for COVID-19 treatment in May before gaining approval in October. Right, so that's in May, June, July, August, September, October. Was it May, June, July, August, September, October? So 5 months, right? Is the expedited process for authorizing COVID-19 vaccines doesn't and it goes on to other stuff. So as bonus round, clearance, FDA clearance is usually applied to devices, anything from heart monitoring apps, on a smartwatch, x-ray machines, etc, 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 right? So once again, like I said, can't do any commentary, because as soon as I do commentary, ESO blocks the video. That is an article, right? Very important question, very important terminology to understand the news. And as a bonus, right, this is from let me see this. It's going to blog.pet from the law.harvard.edu for edu, right? It says under an EUA, can businesses require employees and customers to get these things in them, right? And I'll just break the ice. I won't go through all of this, but at the bottom of it, it's basically like, under the rules, no they can't, but also yes they can. Right, so it once again is typical of Esau's laws, being open for interpretation, which of course they have to be, because he's got an agenda to fulfill. Right, but like I said, this I want to bring this out just in case any brothers are in being pressured at the moment. You can bring up this case law where actually there is no as things stand, and this is the key point, as things stand, because as we've observed, like for instance with the masks, things start off as you probably should and then become mandatory. Like I said, this is more just for if brothers are in that kind of position and they're being pressured into certain things. As all of these are currently authorizations and not approvals, you can kind of technically deny, and then your boss can't really say anything. But as soon as it becomes an approval, then would you call it, your employer has much more power to fire you. So this is, like I said, this isn't a commentary. This is stating facts, explaining terminologies. Yeah, so as always, Lord's will, I was advised, and it's time, shalom.